Janesville, Edgerton area. He said, oh, I just bought this on Courthouse Hill in Janesville the other week. It's the same fireplace. Obviously, it wants to stay in Rock County, so it's here. And we built, you know, a surround, and so it looks like it's been here for a while. I found this in Chicago, and we have it secured. I can change the fabric if I want to. Someday I may put tile. I'm just not there yet to make that decision. And this is what I turned my logo, Atria Hall, into. It's very special. My mom passed away, and she did know about this building before she died. She had been in here one time, probably a month before she passed away. And if you believe in this sort of thing, I believe she's a butterfly. And so I found this statue, and this sort of looks like me, and she always liked my hair up. So this is my logo for Atria Hall, and it's me looking at my mom or vice versa. And it's going to sit here always. The space has a very good feeling in it, and I only want people to be happy and to celebrate family, friends, your loved one, your partner. You can sleep here, you can eat here, you can bathe here, you can shop in Edgerton, you can go to Lake Koshkonong. We're right in the middle of Edgerton, Madison, Chicago, Milwaukee. We're close to hiking, camping, all sorts of things. And if you're not a camper, you can sleep here and go visit the people that are camping. So goodbye. Thanks for watching this episode of Oregon Life at Atria Hall in Edgerton.
Oregon Community Access. Community is our middle name.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Susan Levan Green, and I am the group leader of the Sugar River Quilts of Valor, and we're located in Belleville. But we we make quilts, and we pretty much cover kind of southwestern Wisconsin. We awarded quilts in Monroe, even Waunakee, Mazomanie, many different places. So I'll introduce my colleagues that are here with me. This is Sue Gamer, and then Louise Bruckham, Brunkow, and Debbie Versnick. These are all in my group, and we're here to award quilts. So the way that we're going to do this, we're honoring 6 veterans today, and what we would do is I'm going to give a little presentation, and I'm going to give a little bit of background information about the veteran, and I'd like to have the veteran come up here and stand. These ladies will hold the quilt up so you can all see it. Then they will wrap the veteran, and then we'd like the veteran, and they're in alphabetical order, so to take your seat. And then afterwards, we'll get some group pictures. So that's how we'll run today's presentation. So I'll tell you a little bit about the Quilt of Valor Foundation. It was started in 2003 by a quilter and Blue Star mother when her son was in Iraq. And one night she had a dream, and she saw a veteran, a warrior, sitting on the bed dealing with the terrors of war. And in the next sequence, she saw this warrior wrapped with a healing and comforting quilt. And then the next day, she said, I'm going to make quilts for veterans. And she contacted Walter Reed, and then she got some other fellow quilters involved, and they made quilts, and they started giving quilts to veterans that were at Walter Reed. This is during the war in Iraq. So that's how the Quilt of Valor began. And now there's over 10,000 volunteer quilters all across the nation, and we make healing and comforting quilts of valor. We're gathered here to be honoring such veterans, and the mission of the Quilts of Valor Foundation is to cover service members and veterans touched by war with comforting and healing quilts of valor. And our quilts must be awarded directly in a ceremony such as this. Our quilts are a single lifetime award. Some say that a Quilt of Valor is the civilian equivalent of a Purple Heart. But unlike a Purple Heart that's stamped out, these quilts took at least 6 months, sometimes longer, and every stitch is sewn with love. So veterans, when you receive your quilt, know that these quilts are sewn with love for each and every one of you. Veterans, just as you are unique, each quilt is unique. Your name has been inscribed on the quilt, and so future generations will know the service that you have done for your country. There may also be a letter from the quilt maker describing her background. So our Quilts of Valor have 3 significant parts. The top layer, with its many colors, shapes, fabrics, represents the communities, the individuals, veterans, the individuals of our nation. The batting is the center of the quilt. It provides its warmth. It provides healing and comfort to the veteran. And then lastly is the backing, which is the strength. It holds all the pieces of the quilt together. It represents the strength of the Quilt of Valor recipient, the strength of their families, the strength of our communities, and the strength of our nation. So we are now honored to present these quilts. So again, as I call your name, please stand and come up here. The ladies will hold the quilt up, and then they'll wrap you, and then you come sit over here. The first one is David Batker. Hope I said that right, Batker.
That sounds good.
David served in the United States Navy from 1956 until 1962. He was a welder and metal repairman aboard the USS Hornet. You can stand right here, which was a CVA-12 aircraft carrier. An unusual incident while he was in service was some of the planes fought Chinese aircraft in an undeclared encounter. He was deployed in the Western Pacific, which was vacation from farming.
That's incredible.
His wife is Katie. Fold it in half now. His wife is Katie, and he has 2 daughters and 2 sons, 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. He spent 12 years in dairy farming, 30 years hog farming, then farm and equipment sales, followed by 6 years as a full-time electrician. His community service involved PTA, teaching Sunday school, serving on church councils, RSVP meal driver, Vets Helping Vets driver, a volunteer at a hospice center, operating the training carousel at Violet's Park, and a Veterans Honor Guard. He has been a life member of the VFW for over 60 years. David Batker. Our next recipient is Dan Cobb. Dan served in the United States Army from 1966 until 1969. Dan served 13 months in Korea between 1968 and 1969 as a subsistence storage specialist, which involved delivering rations to mess halls. He was serving in Korea when the USS Pueblo was captured by North Korea. His wife is Cheryl, and they have been married 53 years. After his service, he worked as a computer operator for Alliant Energy and retired in 2005. His community participation included singing in the church choir at St. John's since 1995. Dan Cobb. Our next recipient is James L. Fogg, Sr. James served in the United States Navy between 1965 and 1970. He was an aviation machinist on the USS Shangri-La, an aircraft carrier VF-62, and served in the Mediterranean Sea. His wife is Clara, and his children are Jeannie and James L. Jr. His grandchildren are Brian, Ainsley, Kellen, and Lindsay. James L. Fogg, Sr. Our next recipient is Gary W. Koch. Gary served in the United States Navy between 1966 to 1972. He worked in aviation maintenance administration. He served on the USS Wasp, a CBS-18 aircraft carrier, based at Quonset Point, Rhode Island.
Yep.
An interesting fact while he was in service was his ship picked up the Gemini capsule. In 1966, he entered the Exalted Order of MITROGS, which stands for Master in Recovery of Gemini Spacecraft. I had to look that up. His wife is Chris, and his sons are Brian, Jeremy, Greg. His grandchildren are Clayton and Kendall. After his service, he was a logistics manager. He spent 20 years coaching and being a recreation department coordinator volunteer.
This way. This way, sir.
How about face?
I got you. Hold on. Okay. Oh, okay.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Gary W. Koch.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
I forgot.
Gary, just sit right down over here.
Oh, good, okay.
Our next, no, one more over.
One more over?
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, our next recipient is Dan Schumann. Dan served in the United States Navy between 1979 to 2004. He was in Beirut in 1982. He is engaged to Beth. His father, Robert, was in World War II, and after his service, he was an engineer.
That's very, very nice.
Yeah.
Dan Schumann.
You gotta go.
Yes, okay.
We're bossy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your service.
Care for my fiance's watching?
Okay, this one. Okay, our last recipient is Gene Stageberg. Gene served in the United States Army from 1953 until 1955. He served in Korea. He was drafted out of the Navy Reserves to go to Korea. He is married and has 6 children, 10 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
After service, he was self-employed in the trucking business for 70 years. Gene Stageberg.
Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay, Gene, you can see here. So veterans, as I said, you may have a letter attached to the quilt from the maker. Some of these ladies here made some of your quilts, so if you, and actually 3 of the ladies are here that made 3 of the quilts. So if you want to meet with them afterwards, you can, I'll introduce you. So veterans, as of today, the story of this quilt becomes your story. We hope that you will use this quilt as a tangible reminder of the love with which it was sewn for you. Thousands of men and women across this land are forever in your debt. It has been our privilege to honor you with the Quilt of Valor. And so, on behalf of the Quilt of Valor Foundation, behalf of the Sugar River Quilts of Valor, and a grateful nation, with our deepest appreciation, Sugar River Quilts of Valor say, thank you for your service and welcome home. So we would like to get some pictures of the group here, and then individually if you want to get to, but we can get pictures of the veterans. So I'm going to get a couple. Everybody likes to see the...
You want us to stand up or?
No, you can sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
My family relied on public assistance to help provide meals for us. These meals fueled my involvement in theater, which fostered my love for acting. When people are fed, futures are nourished. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Oh, the clock just changed too. I would like to call this meeting of the Oregon Public Library Board to order on Wednesday, May 8th. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Strada.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Goplin.
Here.
Beshen.
Here.
Bonsonfield.
Here.
Reese. Here. And Bergstrom. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Is there a motion to adopt or amend the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second. Thank you, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have an agenda, thank you. Seeing no community this evening, we'll skip community input and go straight to our consent agenda. 5A is amending or approving the minutes from our April meeting.
There's one correction to the minutes we'd like to suggest, which is reflecting that Laura Reese was present at the last meeting. Her name inadvertently got omitted from the minutes.
Oh,
Is there a motion to amend the minutes and then approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Laura. Is there a
Yeah,
second?
put my name on it.
Second? Thank you, Jeff. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of amending and then adopting the minutes?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Let's move on to review and payment of available bills and accepting the financial reports.
For bills, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. You can kind of see that we have very few building bills. We will have some more in the future, but the number per month is going to be very, very low moving forward as we kind of wrap up those expenses. One correction is that the Desiree Mayo line item is actually $300. So I just want to make that clarification, as the earliest version of the packet had it at $200 to make sure we all know what we're approving. Are there any questions on any items you'd like me to talk more about what the item is for?
Okay, pretty straightforward. Is there a motion to pay available bills? Thank you, Carlene. Is there a second? Thank you, Jenny. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I don't think I did the financial reports in there, so would we like to do that separate? Sorry, Laura.
Can we just add it to my motion?
Okay, I mean, then we have to do that.
I'll just move to accept the financial reports.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll second.
Thank you. Rock, paper, scissors. Okay. Any discussion, questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to discussion and possible action items. 6A, rescinding the library-specific volunteer policy.
So this is basically because last month we adopted the village's volunteer policy and waiver form, and we had already had a library-specific policy, and we just wanted to verify that everything in the new village policy was covered. Anything that we would need covered in the village policy was, and it is in fact. And so instead of having two policies, we can rescind our library-specific policy and just follow the village policy to be consistent with other departments.
Okay, so is there a motion to rescind the library-specific policy for volunteers that is now covered by the village policy we adopted last month?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I think John wants to second.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I was just in awe of the motion.
It's already there for me.
The longest motion we're gonna have tonight, I think.
Don't say that. Challenge accepted.
How long of a motion
So we have a second by John. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, moving on to 6B, rescinding the library-specific purchasing policy.
So the library had on the books a purchasing policy for many, many years. The village recently adopted a financial plan that included a procurement policy, which is basically what we've been following. And so basically this is to adopt the library board filed a procurement policy adopted by the village, which is a little more comprehensive. It's what we're doing anyway. It addresses the similar things. And then rescind again our library-specific purchasing policy and move the more comprehensive one.
What Jennifer said.
I had it worded more succinctly in here, though, so that we don't exceed
the word limit.
The word limit.
So is there a motion to adopt the village procurement policy and rescind the library-specific purchasing policy?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Carlene. John would like to second.
Sure, why not?
Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to the proposal from the Energy Tax Savers.
So we've been talking about the IRA Inflation Reduction Act funding, which I think it was approved probably 2 years ago. It's been a while. That was before our project went out to bid. And finally, this is the first year where you're actually able to apply. They have the tax guidance out and there's a process for applying. We've completed the pre-registration process. You have to wait a month after that to get a number, which you're required to use in the forms that you complete. And it would be my recommendation that we approve this proposal to have energy tax savers provide their services to submit the geothermal, to assist with the geothermal application. Because we've done the pre-filing, they reduced their cost by $1,000 over what they initially quoted us at. There are many municipalities that have, in Dane County, that have more staff resources that are endeavoring to try this on their own, but it's really the first time anybody is really doing this on the municipal level in Dane County. And so far we've had some folks that pre-registered before us that we followed their guidance, but now looking at the forms that are required to fill out, geothermal is a little bit more complicated than some of the other things like solar. And so this would engage the professional services of people that are experts and do this all the time. It may also allow us to do the solar on our own in the future because we'd have that format and the knowledge and expertise. We have to get certain documentation from Tri-North for our subs, our costs. Our geothermal system is a significant portion of the building project costs. So the funding that we can get at 30% is going to be 6 figures potentially. And so I think it would also be very important to have their expertise in case we get audited as a village, that would have that financial expertise to cover that. And then it would also help inform any of their future village projects because we'd be very clear in the guidelines, we know what documentation is needed, and we could, help with those choices moving forward. So as much as I don't like spending that amount of money, I would recommend that we follow that proposal. It also frees up library staff time to work on things that library staff are better at than taxes.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, absolutely.
So looking at the quote, unless I'm looking at the wrong thing, it says that we will give them the retainer and then a certain amount of money, $3,000, upon receipt of the pre-filing registration number. Given that that's the royal we, obviously, we did the work in order to get that pre-filing. Are we changing any of the payment structure since they will not have done work before that, or will they have?
This was carryover from their initial proposal, which we got from them probably 6 months ago, and I didn't catch that before the meeting.
Okay.
Had I caught that, I probably would have asked them to change that benchmark because we did do that ourselves. They did reduce the payment amounts.
Where is the reflection of the reduction of the payment amounts? Is that in here?
It's the total amount has been reduced, so it was the whole amount, and the payments installments were $1,000 more prior to this, and I did not catch that benchmark being a point, but it is a little bit difficult because there's basically 2 benchmarks in the process, and one is getting the pre-registration number, and then one is filing, and so there's not really a good other step to measure the scope of work, so it's a little bit hard. So we could ask if they'd split it.
Comfortable with it, that's fine. I just wanted to verify because that was my concern.
No, that's a good question. That's a great question, and I wish I would have caught that, but I did not.
Isn't this a little bit like taking out an insurance policy prior to engaging, in a way, just to be sure that we're on the safe side of everything?
Well, yes, and also they have expertise that they help people with energy projects and tax incentives all the time, and so they're helping. They said they're helping dozens of different projects, so they need to know this inside and out. I don't. So
it's like we're hiring them, and they're guaranteeing it, and so we're safer if we do this.
Yeah, you're basically, hiring somebody who's an expert on that topic to help you navigate that topic versus somebody who's not an expert trying to pretend like they know what they're doing.
Kind of like we hired architects to design a building.
Right.
Well, and they also will provide the IRS audit assistance if there is an IRS audit in the future. So I think that alone feels worth it, honestly, because then if we did get audited, that's on
That's
them.
trouble.
They would help with it. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Is this could be a significant refund, and it's the first year that they're offering these incentives, and so it's something that, and there's not a lot of people that are applying. So I think that would put us in the category that may target an audit because of the nature of it. We don't usually file the 990T and all sorts of things like that, and so I would much rather be confident that we're doing it absolutely correctly than to save a little bit of money and have any chance that we didn't do it the way we needed to do it.
May I make that motion, please?
Oh, I have a
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to ask a clarifying question. This is the thing where you did a lot of research and tried to do this multiple different ways, as I recall. Like when it was initially filled out, it's like went online, tried to find some things, and am I remembering that correctly? Like this is this is related to that.
Yeah, this has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
So we've been waiting throughout our project for the guidance. We've been we went through the pre-application process, which took some research and work, and that we've completed.
Yeah,
and now we know what forms need to be completed.
Wanted to
so, yeah.
clarify that this is the thing that was super confusing, and nobody really knew how to answer the questions.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, okay,
Yep. And
makes
hopefully they
sense
do.
to find somebody who knows how to answer the questions. Yes.
Yes.
Now I would entertain the motion, John.
I would like to put forth this motion, please.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll
Sure.
second.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions, concerns? I want to thank Jennifer for all of the work she has already put in, because I know this is not an easy thing. I don't even do my own personal taxes. I couldn't imagine doing something on this scale. So thank you for everything you've done so far. And I think this is the best decision for everyone to capitalize the most out of this opportunity.
And just to clarify, the source of the funding for paying this would, I talked to Martin, the village administrator, and because the funding that we get from this would go back to the village because they contributed an extra $600,000 towards our project to cover the cost of solar and geothermal. Per the agreement we have with them, any funding we get for this up to that amount goes back to the village and to pay the debt service and reduces the amount that they essentially contributed to the project. And so basically the cost to file this incentive would come out of the refund amount before that goes to them.
Sure.
Nice.
And Martin's in favor of this.
He agreed that that would be reasonable given we're doing the work to
Okay.
do that. So.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Moving on to the 2025 village budget, including the budget schedule and memo.
So you kind of have an overview of the budget schedule. The item we'll talk about next on the agenda is the capital requests. And then our budget's due to the village administrator and finance director the Friday, August 16th. And then the final budget, they go through some budget meetings with the village board, and then a final adoption of the budget usually takes place in mid-November. They anticipate that it'll be some challenging budget conversations because of levy limits and some village needs that are just gonna, and just ongoing the way things work. I don't want to get too much into details and bog our conversation down, but just want to make you aware of that schedule and kind of the context. In the packet, you do have the memo that the village board received at their meeting on Monday that kind of outlines more details about how the budget works and kind of some of the considerations that the village board will have to take into account as they navigate the budget timeline. They did talk about potentially considering a referendum for future budget year. It would not be possible to have a budget referendum that would go into place for the 2025 budget, so the earliest that would affect funding would be for 2026 for the fiscal year. So just wanted to share that. We're kind of in we were kind of in a unique position of having a good budget year when we moved into the new library and had some additional costs, but we also, wanted to be responsible about budgeting, and there's some additional building maintenance costs that we couldn't anticipate and some staffing needs that we just didn't, fully understand. And so we kind of have the disadvantage now of going into the next budget year of needing those things and needing to make sure we navigate as part of the whole village plan as well. So.
I have a question.
Yes.
When I read through this memo, it sounded sort of gloomy, like really, really pessimistic, and it's like, so are we, in every other department in the entire village, being asked to reduce our budgetary impact?
So right now, one of Martin's main goals is to have the village board kind of provide direction to staff, and they'll be hopefully continuing conversations at upcoming board meetings and providing some directions about here's what we'd like you to prioritize, here's kind of our goal or whatever, and so that we can all be consistent in how we approach it to the extent possible, knowing that everybody's a little different. because they're projecting a deficit because of, some added position or an added position, but it's not just that piece of the puzzle, it's more complicated than that, which is causing the deficit. They also budget things conservatively, including revenue, and so there's some other pieces of the puzzle that, could come into play, and it'll likely be a better scenario than they're, calculating out, but they just want to be realistic and have those conversations now so that people can be prepared as they talk about it and present the most responsible budgets they can for each department.
And how will this impact on the library budget?
So it's potential, they could say you can't, you need to keep your budget under a certain % increase. It's possible they could say no new positions. It's possible they could provide any number of guidance as to how you approach things. It could be, in the past there have been years where they say you can only add if you can make a case for why you're adding something. So there's different approaches they might take. We don't know for sure what that approach will be, but we'll just have to kind of follow whatever guidelines are provided.
Do you want me to talk about this at all?
What?
Do you want me to talk about this?
If you'd like to, that'd be great.
So, there are several issues that impact the budget. The biggest one being that we're growing, and we've had several large capital projects, and we have more large capital projects online. One of them, of course, being the senior center, and looking at what are our options in how we can grow our revenue. And you can see that it's on page 32 of this packet. We're projected to have a $330,000 deficit, and what that looks like if we were to just take something out of the budget, what that would look like. It says there it's approximately the same as the revenue from the wheel tax. The wheel tax is not ending, so if we took that out, it would be a $660,000 deficit moving forward. So looking at how we actually determine how we spend our reserves, if we have any surplus, we tend to have a surplus from one year to the next. Usually that's put toward the rainy day fund, but maybe we don't do that. Maybe that goes toward the budget. But all in all, I think the first thing that we'll look at is budgetary priorities for every department, knowing also that our police department has been running at a 20% personnel deficit for a long time, and also knowing that if we stay within a certain range in our fire and EMS expenditures, that we can fund them in a different way and it doesn't have to come off. So we've got a lot of things to consider, and realistically, we're looking at probably April of 2025 having a referendum. And this is one of those things, and you've heard me say it, and I'll say it again and again and again, the way the state government, and Martin says it in the beginning of his memo, it's worth reading this memo, that the way state government funds or shares revenue with municipalities and counties has not changed since 2005. There was a slight change last year based on sales tax. That will continue, but that's a variable. You have no idea what it is. All revenue mill rate increases are based on new construction value to the village. So we're in a conundrum. The state government is still sitting on a $4 billion surplus that they've chosen not to share with municipalities or public education or any long list of other priorities. And we at the village level are tasked with trying to figure out how we continue to have services for our residents, and we make the budget. So it's going to be tough, and I strongly recommend that people understand what's at stake here, because we need to be really putting pressure on the state legislature to take a look. We're not the only municipality in this situation. It's happening all over the state. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be fixed, and we have to deal with it in real time. Mm-hmm. So we can't ignore that these problems are going to continue until that is fixed.
So it's depressing, but it's a reality.
It's been coming for a while.
It has been coming for a while, and it's hit other places. Towns have been hit a lot more quickly than villages. villages that are in proximity to Madison or to other larger cities that are growing, it's come slower to us than it has to like Monroe.
Right.
They've been dealing with this kind of thing for a while. So we've been fortunate up until this point to not have to put in place a wheel tax or a streetlight fee or any of those kinds of things. And now we're in a situation where $330,000 has to come from someplace, and no one wants to cut services. And we also don't want to return to the way things were done before the compensation study, when people started to be paid what they were worth, rather than just, how we pay village employees is the last thing that we look at. And if we have a little money left over, we try to throw it at them and split it up and say, we'll do better next year. Fortunately, I'm happy to say that was before I got on the board. The compensation study meant that we started paying people what they were worth, and which means we keep good people. So there's just a lot that has to be dealt with, and it is unfair to say that the board is spend happy and doesn't care how much the taxes are. We absolutely do. But at the same time, we have to look at, okay, what does that mean? Where, if we don't have the revenue, where do we go? What do we do?
It's also hard to write a referendum for something like the schools are not easy, but like I feel like that's an easier sell than like, hey, vote.
Right.
Do you want a road?
Right, exactly.
Super exciting.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I mean, it is what it is.
The other important thing to clarify is that the levy limits only apply to the operating budget, not the capital budget, and so that's a point of confusion because basically the village could spend money on building a building, but they can't spend money above the levy limits to operate that. So capital is a separate bucket, and so that's really confusing to residents as well.
And taking on debt is the same kind of thing.
But Carly, I want to be really clear. I was not accusing the village.
No, I didn't think you were accusing
of being irresponsible. That's not what I meant at all.
Yeah, it is, but you're right. It is. It's very concerning.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have utmost respect for the village board. Just saying. They're doing a great job and they're working really hard, and everybody there is very dedicated. It's a good board. It's a really good board.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I also think this board is also that thoughtful.
Absolutely.
No, I really do. I really think that Jennifer puts a lot of time and effort into making sure that we are also being responsible with our budget, to work in conjunction with the responsibilities of the village. So I do appreciate everyone's work on that.
Yeah, so I just recommend that you definitely read these memos from Martin so that you have a better understanding of why and how we have to consider these things, because it's going to impact everybody.
Right.
Any other questions on there? Shall we move on to the library capital budget request? Okay.
So the village recently started a 10-year capital improvement planning process. And so each year, as part of the budget process, they look at all the village's capital needs and kind of prioritize, especially for the coming year, what is going to be funded and how. And so basically they're asking us now to submit our request for the next 10 years. This is unchanged from what we saw last year. They have some very specific definitions of capital, so some things that you might think of as capital don't qualify because they're not over $5,000 per item, because they're trying to only do things that make sense to pay for by borrowing. So right now, the only three things that we have in the capital request are replacement of our self-checkouts machines, and those are all new now. And so we're not planning to replace those for a long time. We'd also at some point like to get in an automated materials handling system, like they call it a sorter. Many libraries use that to help check in materials, and that makes things more efficient and requires less staff overall, and saves their staff to do other things or do things more efficiently. And then at some point we'll be due for a microfilm reader replacement, which is we use it to access old copies of the Oregon Observer. So we don't have any requests for the next 4 years. So it's a pretty easy submission. There's no changes over a request for last year. The one thing I'll note is that we would hope to be able to get potentially more solar panels for the new library, because that is still kind of part of our building project. Martin said we didn't need to submit that as part of the capital improvement plan. If that doesn't happen this year, then in future years we might need to submit that if we wish to do that at a future date. Are there any questions about the capital improvement plan? This is due in June, so you could either vote to approve these items tonight, or you could wait and discuss it further at the June meeting, however you'd like to handle that.
Jennifer,
Yes.
these have all been in the plan for a long time.
They were all in the plan last year. I think last year may have been the first year or the second year that we did it. But I did not change a single word. I did change the self-check photo, but I didn't make it in the packet, so.
Okay.
Fair.
But what I'm saying is, this is something that's been on the books for a while, and we're not
Yes.
making radical changes, and it's to be expected, and do we need a motion to approve this?
We do.
May I?
Yes, please, John. Is
So
there,
moved.
is there a second? Thank you, Carleen. Is there any discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor of approving the 10-year capital improvement plan?
Aye.
And I should note, we're having OPN do a maintenance plan for the building, and so they might identify things as part of that process that need to be addressed in 8 years, or that they think will need to be replaced in 10 years, and so those may inform our next year's plan and may cause us to add something on year 9 that we didn't know about this year.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you, Jennifer. All in favor of approving? We did that, yes, and opposed, no. Got it. Sorry. No, it's okay. I'm just to keep up with myself.
Maybe should have all over again.
Moving on to 6F, the sponsorship agreement for the makerspace/creative space.
And so after the discussions we've had at previous meetings, the donor does wish to proceed with sponsoring the makerspace. We had some conversations about the way recognition can be worded. We had some conversations about renaming the makerspace to the creative space, and the board approved changing it to creative space moving forward if the donor chose to proceed. And so this is basically an agreement that took our standard agreement and then added an additional terms section that kind of clarified some of the special action with the creative space name change, the benches outside, and then I did add something that addressed the funding item that we talked about, that if the funding is not all needed for capital costs related to the building project, that those funds hopefully will be allowed to be used by the donor to support the success of the makerspace itself, in terms of providing presenters and programs, supplies, equipment, things that will make the space more vibrant and something that we can continue to use moving forward. I would recommend you approve the agreement. The donor will be returning to town in about a week, and then the intent would be to go through that with them, and then we'd be able to proceed with signing and moving forward with that donation.
Is there a motion to approve the agreement?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
Sure.
Thanks, Carly. Any comments, questions?
I would like to say that Penny was a great advocate of education, a great advocate of creative thinking, incredible person. And Dr. Zorba, I mean, likewise. I have nothing but absolute respect, and I think this is an amazing opportunity to honor and recognize.
I agree. Thank you. All in favor of approving the sponsorship agreement?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And thank you to the Pastor family. Moving on to the elevator maintenance agreement.
And I just want to point out that the original packet, the agreement in the original packet was a 10-year term, and we prefer not to sign agreements for such a lengthy time with a particular vendor. So the packet that went out, I believe yesterday morning, had replaced that agreement with an agreement with the same company, same terms, except for a 3-year period, and it slightly changed the annual fee just a little bit. I think it was about $300 more. But that would allow us to make changes for vendors as needed, and that's just more of a typical period that you'd engage somebody to do that type of work for, at least in a municipal setting. It basically covers minor parts coverage, but it would not cover a major issue. The elevator is under warranty for the rest of this year, but moving forward, in any given year, we would have the potential to have a major parts issue. We do have a fund balance that we could dip into if we needed to suddenly cover a significant replacement part cost on a one-time basis. But hopefully that won't be happening for quite some time.
Is there a motion to approve the Schindler maintenance agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions?
So if there are major maintenance issues that extend over and above the maintenance agreement, those could incur additional costs,
Yes.
but that's to be expected.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to the proposal for required annual fire alarm system inspection and testing.
So you have 4 different proposals in your packet from Omni. Is it okay if I just talk about all 4 of them kind of in
Please
order? So the fire inspection is the only one that's really code required, so that one's absolutely critical to have to do the annual inspection of the fire alarm system to make sure it works properly in case there was an actual fire. There are inspection requirements by code. And so that one we absolutely want to do. Omni is the vendor that installed the system, and so they're most familiar with it. And so it would be nice, at least while we're getting set up, to continue their work on that, and then we can obviously seek other companies or do something more competitively in the future. But for the continuity as we get started, I think it would be important to proceed with them. They also did the low voltage system, so they did the card access system, the security camera system, and the AV systems. And so they also have proposals to do an update each year of those software systems to the latest version of the software to make sure we're getting full functionality on those things, and also to lock in current pricing for those licenses that are related to those systems. And I think they're all kind of 2 or 3 year warranties, or 2 or 3 year proposals depending on when the install took place. I'm happy to answer any questions, but they've been a good partner so far. Some of their installs are just wrapping up as they kind of are the last thing to happen on the project, but they've been very responsive when we've had issues with systems so far.
So effectively, we have 3 options, depending upon if we want 1, 2, or 3 years, or this is just a comprehensive altogether.
It's a comprehensive list of 4 different systems.
Sure.
And we would ideally have a agreement in term for each of the different systems.
Okay.
Yeah. In a perfect world.
And you're gonna pay for the license updates, whether you're part, so even if you don't say that this warranty is what you wanna do or that type of thing, you're gonna pay, and then you're gonna pay whatever the dollar amount is at that time. So this actually locks in probably a better rate than what you would pay 2 years from now when you need to update things. That helps, but that's good information to have.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a motion to approve the Omni Technologies proposal here for the fire alarm, card access system, security cameras, and audiovisual?
You can make that motion.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Laura. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. So would this be the kind of thing that if they came out to do the fire alarms, they would do they'd just do everything all at the same time?
No, they have different techs that specialize in different systems, and so one tech might be well-versed in 2 or 3 of these things, but typically the fire people don't necessarily always do card access.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody. I think we are down to public art opportunity.
So when we were doing our plans, saved a spot to make sure we could facilitate any opportunities for public art. And we heard from Randy Glish, who's kind of been working really hard for the Public Arts Committee, and Jeff Rao from Public Works, asking if we would be interested in hosting this particular piece called Burr Oak on our patio for the coming year. So they have an image here, and the artist is Tim Adams, and the artwork has a 4x4 footprint. And the install date would be in about 2 weeks, around May 22nd. when I first discussed it with Randy, they didn't have a lot of details about how this particular piece would be installed. And we are also right now navigating some challenges with landscaping, wanting to make sure that's fully established before we open the patio, and making sure that having some conversations with engineers and the contractors to make sure everybody's on the same page about who's responsible for what pieces of it, and to make sure that's done correctly and successfully, because if we do it right now, then we'll save in the long run, and it'll be look much nicer. What that means is we probably won't be opening the patio for a couple more weeks, so probably until June, just to make sure the lawn outside gets established. We had a situation over the winter where some people accidentally used a door and have got muddy footprints everywhere, and so we really just want to make sure that both for the library's sake on the inside, but also for the landscaping on the outside, that it has a chance to really be there and be strong before we put too much foot traffic on it. So I had a conversation with Jeff around Tuesday, and he emailed Randy suggesting that this would still be a great piece for the library if the library board were interested, but suggesting that maybe the location out front would be better to make sure that they're not putting any equipment on the landscaping to get it in place, and then also just to make sure it's accessible from our perspective right away instead of having to wait till the patio is open. I kind of added a little more information to share with Randy, so he kind of understood why we were asking that, and didn't think it had anything to do with the artist or the artwork, but we did not have a response from him. So I just wanted to share that would be our priority for the location versus what I had said in the memo, but that they felt this was a good piece to tie in with the nature theme that kind of we had been focusing on. So I'd like to put it forth to you to consider if you'd like to accept this piece. I did later learn that they had a different piece that's also available. Should we prefer that? This one was nature themed, the other one was not, and so I did not amend the packet at that point, but I did want you to know that that was possible. If that was of interest, I could share that as well.
Okay. I have a question. It looks like it's metal, and I wonder, sometimes metal pieces like this are meant to rust, and depending on where it's placed, it could have a rust print. Just
Like on
would
the
want to,
concrete.
yeah, like on concrete. I would want to make sure that it's not going to do that before I put it on anywhere where it could have a rust print.
And what would the impact be to the restoration of the prairie land around too? I don't know. if
I don't
that
think
would
it,
have any
no,
kind of-
because it's pretty, I mean, the soils here are pretty high and ferrous kinds of stuff, yeah.
Okay.
But it would stain cement, and it's really hard to get rust out of cement.
Where exactly would it be placed?
I am not sure.
Okay.
The first suggestion was somewhere in the back patio, just kind of in a place that they agreed and we agreed to. But now that this is just kind of a conversation we had yesterday about that not being the best place. And so one option was in the circle area, kind of out front, as an area we had originally thought might be a place for public art, but then figured it's really important to have something that's a right scale there. If it's going to be a permanent installation, it could be a temporary solution. We also have some other areas by the bike path we saved for possible flowers in the future. So there's a couple options we could look at, but I don't know enough about. They didn't have details about how it would need to be secured, so I'm not really confident in if it needs to go on grass or if it needs to go on concrete or how that would work, unfortunately.
Do we need to make a motion on this today, or is this something that we can?
Does it have to be installed on that May 28th?
Oh, there, I missed that part, sorry.
They'll be bringing it to town. I could certainly say that we'd love to have it, but we won't be ready to install it until this is things we need to know first. I would imagine they'd want it up shortly after that, because an artist would not want to have their stuff not be on display.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But if we could, have another meeting or provide a follow-up plan or something, I'm sure that it could be worked with.
So my thought would be, we had talked about having art in that circle, right? This circle kind of ties it in, and the nature kind of does. Plus, it's grass right in the front there. So to me, if we can propose that as the location that we would have available, because I'd be afraid if you're going out where we're going to put flowers again, you're taking equipment out in the dirt and things that we don't necessarily want to do. But here, you're building off asphalt, you're putting it in the grass, it's safe for.
Yeah, And I'm just looking at it, I don't know this, but I'm making an assumption that that base, it looks like it's metal, it's 12 feet tall, so it's gonna be really heavy and it's gonna catch a lot of wind. So I would not be surprised at all if that base is like concrete itself. You know, the one that's in front of the village hall pivots, so if the wind blows, plus it's blocked by the village hall, this is gonna catch a lot of wind.
It looks like
So-
the leaf veins are cutouts though.
Yeah, still,
But
it's
still,
really super
yeah.
flat.
My question was going to be what sort of maintenance does it need throughout the year that we host it? Is the
Yeah.
library
Is it
responsible
on a
for
swivel
that?
so that wind would turn it, so it wouldn't just
Yeah.
go it down?
Yeah, so they didn't have a lot of details about the logistics of the piece. I get the sense that Public Works Department would be happy to assist should we have any maintenance or issues with it. At least I would hope they would.
Artists don't always think about how to
Yes. Logistics.
install their
Yeah.
art, in my experience.
That's
That's all
not,
I'm gonna say.
they're artists.
They're artists.
They're
That's-
artists.
You know, but I would think that we could come up with some ways to secure it a little bit better. But her concerns about the wind are pretty valid. I think there you don't get quite the crosswind. It's a little bit down further. The back I would be a little bit more. It's wide open back there. But.
There's a lot of wind issues for sure. Yeah. The last thing I would want to do is have it blow
Blow
into something
over
and
and
knock
get
something
damage.
damage
Yeah.
something, or more importantly, someone.
somebody.
So
Yeah, hurt somebody.
Yeah.
This looks a lot like a sail.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's exactly what I was thinking. If it's on a swivel, then it would turn with the wind and that would be
Certainly does.
less of an
It
issue.
is,
It
but-
doesn't look
but-
like that to me.
No, it doesn't look like that to me either, but it's really hard to see in
So
that
it
picture.
sounds like we're interested, but we have many questions.
Yeah, I would say that's
I
a
would say
true
down.
statement.
Yeah, and I'm not,
Okay,
don't
so,
have a lot of information about their
Yeah.
process.
Yes.
so-
yes,
Yeah,
The circle area is not flat.
it's not, it's sloped. Good point, yeah.
yeah, it would have to,
Sloped.
there'd have to be a spot prepared for it, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So. So what I'm hearing is we can't quite make a decision until we have all of this. So would we like to have another special meeting to discuss this prior to the end of May? Or how should we proceed, really?
Could Jennifer maybe get some information on how it's installed and then we could email? Is that allowed? Could just kind of send it out?
We
to
can't,
suites? We
we
can't.
have to have public dialogue so that we follow open meetings laws, so we cannot just email and talk about it by email. We could do a Zoom meeting, that would be allowed, we just have to have publicly notice the conversation. So then
Or-
folks would need to come in.
Could we do a conditional approval? Like, I mean, if our concerns are that it's gonna tip over, that the spot's not level enough, or
It would stain our
that it would
concrete.
stain any concrete, like, could we make a provisional?
like making a motion that,
That we give
right,
Jennifer.
we give
Yeah.
Jennifer the ability to determine whether our concerns have been met and say yes based on that, because obviously if we didn't trust Jennifer,
Right.
we,
Right.
we're in a world of hurt already. So I think that it's reasonable for that. I don't know how to word that, Laura.
I could
So-
try, I could try.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do is move to, I mean, if we're all in agreement that this piece fits kind of with the theme, move to approve the piece being installed at the library, contingent on any potential damage, support from village on installation, ensuring safety concerns that we have are met, and provide Jennifer with the authority to make the decision on those.
So can I suggest a word in there to satisfactorily address concerns and then all that stuff that you listed?
Thanks. Did I miss anyone's concern?
No, I just want to clarify if the motion included that specific location you had discussed in earlier conversation or not.
Would you like to include the circle?
I would, just because I have concerns about putting it anywhere else at this point with what we have for potential landscaping issues with heavy machinery or other things that would be needed to install it?
And I think that the base of it is round, that's a circle. It, I think that's a great spot if all those concerns
If
are.
it works on the slope and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
And from a safety consideration, you don't just walk into that circle because
Right.
there's a rail.
But it's so tall that if it were to tip over,
It would
it could
damage.
hit someone.
And it
It's
could
12
damage
feet
the
tall.
rail
12
and the
feet tall.
sidewalk and.
Yeah, it's like, what?
That's taller than the ceiling.
That's a big,
And Lightning Street?
Oh, there's probably lightning protection on top of the building, so you're probably safe there. You're less likely to hit it there than you would be if you're out in the.
And actually, because it's downhill, it will have protection from at least wind
That's true.
from the west.
Speaking as someone who lives right here, though, it is very windy, like right down this like
This
particular
way?
little strip. Yeah, if you're running up this hill, I wouldn't recommend a gases
Do it on a
but
windy day.
just a theory, obviously.
so the wind goes whistling down the plane?
Yes, exactly. Should we include that in the motion? Would that?
Yeah.
So how are we feeling about that motion?
I feel good about that.
Okay.
I feel comfortable.
Would someone like to make that motion?
You can't make that motion?
I can't.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Caroline. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you,
motion.
Coral. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I just want it noted, John, I bet that's a longer motion than the first one. I just wanted to say that, I just want to put it out there.
Thanks.
Just
Especially if we include the wind whistling down
Whistle
the
down
plane.
the plane, yeah.
Oh, we're losing them, Laura. We're losing them.
Sorry.
So just so then if we find for whatever reason that the location isn't of interest to the artist or there's any issues with the slope of the circle area or whatever, it's possible we have to say, this is an awesome piece, but
Yes.
sorry, not this year for us. We'd love to consider hosting next year, and let us know once you know what pieces are available.
I think that's
Right.
fair.
I think that's fair.
Use your best judgment.
Okay, library director's report.
All right. So one good thing is our solar panels got hooked up on Earth Day, so we are now producing energy, which is awesome.
Seriously,
Yes,
that is really cool.
it is really cool.
I like it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see how that impacts everything.
Since last month, we paid off the short-term loan. We had borrowed the money to cover the federal grants, so that loan that we took to cover bills until we got the federal grants is now paid off, so that's exciting. We had Lori Rosengren Hazelden join us, our youth services team, for the limited term position in our youth services department to really help us get through the really busy summer months.
I used to work with her 20 years ago.
Did you? She's-
Yeah, at the bookstore.
That's funny. Didn't know that. We had also Patricia, we said goodbye to her. She retired after working here as a page for 6 years, so we're really going to miss having her around as an employee. And we have 2 other summer pages that are returning. We have extra staff to shelve in the summer because we're busier, so we have more books to check in and put away, and so Amelia and Leah will be helping us with that. The Friends of the Library had their first book sale here at the library, which is very exciting. I heard it was a great success. They have not sent me numbers about how well it did, but it sounded like it was one of the more successful sales, at least as of the first full day. We had our staff in service on Friday. We had probably the best attendance we've ever had. We only had one person that couldn't make it because they were at school, which I think is a valid excuse. But it was just great to have everybody together, and we spent some time reflecting on, all the amazing things that our staff have done over the last 6 months. I think people really appreciated taking some time to celebrate those successes. That was great. The Dane County Library Board approved our provisional exemption. Last month we approved a request to exempt from the county library standards for hours because of our moving, so that got approved. We are still working on our punch list, which is down to 26 items now, and then all the sub items in this. And then they did finally do some separate punch lists for outdoor stuff, some exterior building items, and now they're working on the landscaping, a conversation about those items. So we just had our seasonal maintenance on the HVAC completed, which went really well. There's a few items that the original installing contractor may need to address, but overall it went very well. We are still struggling for the shelving company to finish the install of their items. There's some delays at the factory. Now they're having some scheduling issues with the installers apparently, but we've been really trying to push them, and we're trying to get that install done ASAP. So it's been a little frustrating for them to tell us that items would be expedited in January, and now every time we contact them, there's a new reason why it's not quite ready. So I've been told it was going to be delivered right before my vacation in March, and it's 6 weeks later, and they still have not been able to commit to an install date. So it's been a little frustrating.
Are you worried they're not going to provide the materials?
I'm super annoying, so I think they're going to provide them eventually.
Bless you.
I'm sure you probably still
Annoying,
some money from them too.
But annoying in an adorable way.
Depends on who you ask. So yeah, but it looks, there's some noticeable gaps when you walk through the library, and other people might not notice, but it is kind of not ideal and kind of frustrating that they haven't followed through on that, because we ordered our product 9 months ago, so and they started the install 6 months ago. So.
Is there
Right.
any financial impact to them if they don't?
No, because it was a big amount, and they told us they were going to expedite it, and they charged a financing charge on it, so we paid in good faith because it sounded like they were going to be here the very next week for the install. I authorized payment, and I didn't hold retainage, and that was like the only time I haven't withheld anything.
There is literally no judgment
yeah.
from me. I simply wondered.
Yeah, no, it's like the only time on the project I haven't been super careful about it, because they're like, yeah, we're expediting it, the punch list items come first, and they're just having lots of struggles. So, but yeah, we're being super annoying. So
I doubt it, but okay.
I've emailed at least 6 times in the last week.
I'm proud of you. I think that sounds like a reasonable approach, but maybe I'm not a good judge. I don't know.
So, yeah, that's kind of all I have. We're also, our staff is working to transition to the new Village online timesheeting software, which Laura is kind of taking the lead on that. So that's happening now. So that's one more thing for our staff to work on. We already talked about completing the pre-filing registration for the IRA. That was a big thing. And then we also finished our owner training for the solar system, and that's the last owner training that we have for the project. So that's super exciting. So now we have lots of videos and notes that we have to translate to the rest of the staff in the world. But yeah. Are there any questions on anything you see in the packet or the report? Oh, I should also mention this is new. Laura has gotten some special items from the old library that we think might have value of interest to people, either for sentimental reasons or just because they're in good condition. So she's got an online auction that she's organized that will be in place until Monday, I believe, and the link to that is on our website, so people can bid. We're not promoting it, not spending a lot of resources to promote it, because they're items that we think will sell to somebody locally, and we don't want to make more work. They're of limited interest, but we'd like to find a good home for those and help get closer to emptying out the old library for whatever comes next. So.
Committee reports, Personnel Committee.
I did, in fact, at the beginning of this meeting, send you all the survey. And then just now, as I reread it, I sent you the actual link as well. So here we are. But I sent out the link for feedback from the board. So you have until May 31st to fill that out. If you want it included in what I consider when I am writing the library director's evaluation. Laura was kind enough to send out to the staff, I believe on the 3rd we sent it out, the survey for them. They also have until May 31st, and then I will get that put together and written up. The committee, when is our committee meeting?
June
Sometime
26th.
in June, then we will review what I have written and we will present it to the board in July. This is a little bit earlier than in years past, as I think Jennifer may have mentioned to the wider group, to allow us to potentially put less burden on the library staff during their busiest months, like get this out off their plate before school is out for the summer. But that's what we're working on. I don't
Thank
think
you.
I have anything additional to say about it.
Sounds great.
Thank you for your work on that.
Any updates from the nominating committee? Everyone has returned their survey. Well,
Don't look at me.
I'm not looking at you. She's looking I have all of the surveys back, and so I will work on presenting some recommendations at our June meeting. So, thank you, Laura. We have no village board or school district attendees anymore. I don't think we have any updates besides a fairly shared over budgeting.
It's Teacher Appreciation Week.
It's Teacher Appreciation Week. We thank all of our district teachers and staff for everything they do. Our next meeting is Wednesday, June 12th. Are there any requests for any future agenda items? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Laura. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? All right. We are no longer in session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.